What's going on, everyone? So, based on reports that have recently came out per The Athletic, Lakers are eyeing a Fred VanVleet and D'Lo trade. LA more interested in sign and trade scenario over retaining D'Angelo Russell per The Athletic. Also, according to Joe Van Buha, the Los Angeles Lakers reportedly have interest in using D'Angelo Russell as part of a sign and trade agreement this summer. Joe Van Buha of The Athletic reported the Lakers would prefer a sign and trade scenario over retaining Russell and have Toronto Raptors guard Fred VanVleet on the radar as a potential target. Now, D'Angelo Russell, for the regular season, was very solid for the Lakers, right? And the time that he played, he shot 50% from the field. He gave you 17 points. He also shot 42% from three and was looking like a real stud. I mean, he had some really nice games for the Lakers during the regular season and then got into the playoffs, and he was just really lacking that consistency. He was much better in the first and second round than he was obviously in the Western Conference Finals. He basically became unplayable in the Western Conference Finals. But, I mean, in that Memphis Grizzlies series, right? D'Lo single-handedly saved that season and saved that series. He had some really nice games against the Golden State Warriors. He just, for whatever reason, could not really find his stride in the postseason, whether it was just lack of experience, whether it was, just the competition, whether it was just, it just being too big of a moment, which I don't really know if that's the case, given that, D'Lo had good games. Usually when a guy's moment's too big, he's just terrible and unplayable start to finish. But D'Lo had some really quality moments, had some nice stretches. Even in the Denver series, he had a couple sequences almost each game where he would go off for 6 straight points. But it was just he'd play 30 minutes and that would be his only group of points. His lack of defense was a real issue, right? He was trying at times, but he just doesn't have it defensively. But he's got good size. His ability to play off the ball was really good. And the Lakers can't just lose D'Lo. Now, as soon as we traded for D'Angelo Russell, I immediately said, I love the deal, but he's not worth $30 million. He's closer to $20 to $25 million. Now he might be closer to $20 million, maybe even $18 million a year. If they could get something like that, D'Lo, based on reports, was looking for somewhere in the ballpark of 4 years, $100 million with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think that's still a little rich. Could you do 4 years, $80 million or $85 million? Then I think he's worth the signing. Again, full season, full training camp, full preseason, full offseason. Maybe he'll get more comfortable. He'll find his stride better. You got to remember, this team didn't even play 20 games full by the time they got to the playoffs. D'Angelo Russell had a foot injury that he had to nurse pretty much from the time he got to the Lakers, which he missed several games on, and into the playoffs. Same thing with LeBron, same thing with Anthony Davis. D'Lo just isn't LeBron and Anthony Davis. That's the difference. And D'Lo's not supposed to be. He's supposed to be our third guy. If D'Lo can get consistent, can add some consistency and translate what he does in the regular season to the playoffs, D'Angelo Russell would be perfect, right? Again, in the regular season, he was 17 points per game, 50% from the field, 42% from three. In the playoffs, can he drop to 45% and 38% from three, which would be a huge significant drop off, but that's still great. That's still better than half the league in the playoffs, right? So D'Lo, I do think, has a lot of value on the Lakers if he can, again, find that consistency, which may be a full season under this roster with Darvin Ham in the system, getting more comfortable, having an understanding. There were moments throughout the course of the season and the playoffs where D'Lo you could see the lack of chemistry. D'Lo thought a guy was going to be over here and try to make the pass, but instead he went over here. That comes with, experience, repetitions, stuff like that, understanding, okay, where does somebody like to go? Also, the Lakers were actually good when the ball was in D'Lo's hands and he was actually operating as a point guard. He was really good off the ball, don't get me wrong, but the Lakers were actually significantly better when he was kind of orchestrating the offense at times. So that's something to keep in mind. But if he wants too much money or the demand's too high, or the Lakers can just get better option elsewhere, because D'Lo is good, he's not great, right? So if you can find somebody that's comparable, then yeah, of course I get it. Problem is D'Lo's age. He's very young. He's 26, going to be 27. So he's not some 30-year-old guy. He still has room to grow, develop, and get better. And it does kind of make sense for Fred VanVleet, right? So Fred VanVleet was somebody that was on the Lakers' target in this past trade deadline, right? There was all the talks about Fred and even Gary Trent Jr., who I would love to have Gary Trent Jr. Maybe you could even work out some deal where you get VanVleet and Trent, I don't know. But look, Fred VanVleet defensively is a much better player. D'Lo is a bad defender. Fred VanVleet is actually an above average defender, even at his 6'1" height. He's not as big as D'Angelo Russell, but he gets at it defensively. He has a 114 defensive rating. League average is 115. So he's slightly better than league average defensively, which is good. You need a defensive guard. Fred VanVleet can also play on the ball. He can play off the ball. This is a guy that for the regular season this year gave the Toronto Raptors 19 points, 7.2 assists, 1.8 steals, and basically just under a block. He only had 2 turnovers, so he took care of the ball, and also got 4 rebounds. So he's basically a 19, 7, and 4 guy, which is really good. Here's the problems, though. One, Fred VanVleet only shot 40%, actually technically under, 39.3% from the field. Not from 3, from the field. And then shot 34.2% from three-point range this year. Now, granted, he was taking 8.8 attempts, so more than half of his attempts were from 3. He only took 7.3 attempts from the field, in which he shot 45% from 2-point range, right? So, he's a 45 and 35% guy. I like the defense. I like what Fred VanVleet brings. I think that he is a solid contributor. How much better is he than D'Lo, right? I mean, Fred VanVleet in the playoffs, from what we've seen, would show up more. Have no doubts about that at all. But regular season, D'Lo is actually a more efficient and all-around better player outside of the defense, right? Remove the defense. The only thing that Fred VanVleet is better at is defense. Again, D'Lo for the Lakers gave you 17 points, which Fred VanVleet, he was averaging 19 points, but D'Lo did it on 50% from the field as opposed to 40%, and he did that on 42% from 3 as opposed to 35%. Now, can Fred VanVleet maybe playing next to LeBron James, can he up his three-point percentage, right? That could be a possibility. He has shot 40% from 3 before, but that was only on 4 attempts per game. His best season was 2021-2022, just based on percentage per volume, in which he shot almost 10 threes per game and shot 37, almost 38%. He did have another season in the 2019-2020 where he shot 7 attempts and shot 39%. So he is a guy that is capable of shooting 38+% from 3. If he could get to that, now we're cooking, right? It's just the efficiency is my concern with Fred VanVleet. Here's the other problem, and here's why I'm not big on the Fred VanVleet sign and trade. Fred VanVleet wants to be paid. He wants, 25 to 30. He basically wants as much money as D'Lo would make, right? So one, does Toronto want to do that deal? 2, Toronto's probably going to want some assets in exchange for that deal. I don't think Fred VanVleet, per a sign and trade for D'Lo, is worth giving up a first round pick. Maybe if you have to throw in if it's like 1 second, maybe. But 1, does Toronto want D'Angelo Russell on a multiple year contract? And if they do, great, but what do they want in return for that? And the biggest factor, Fred VanVleet would hard cap the Lakers. If you're going to hard cap the Lakers on $30 million for Fred VanVleet, I'd rather do the same thing and go do that for Kyrie Irving, right? Like, if you have the choice of Kyrie or Fred VanVleet, I mean, Kyrie's a no-brainer. So my thing is that, like, if the Lakers were able to figure out a way to sign Fred VanVleet, then sure. But the Lakers, at most, realistically, would only be able to get to probably $14 million in cap space, right? If they basically renounced everybody but like Rui, Reeves, LeBron, AD, and Vando. Oh, and Max Christie as well. So is Fred VanVleet going to come to the Lakers for $14 million? Probably not. Especially when Toronto offered him, what, $25 million a year, something, or 27, I think it was. I think it was $27 million a year. So he would basically have to take half the money to go to the Lakers. And on top of that, like, then the Lakers basically lose essentially everybody but like their main core guys. And like, I know some people might look at this and go, well, Mo Bamba, Malik Beasley, those aren't huge losses. But it is when you could go make other deals, right? So like, in my opinion, I would rather, if like, let's say you can't get Kyrie, instead of going and trading for Fred VanVleet, I'd rather just keep D'Angelo Russell, pay D'Angelo Russell, maybe something comes up on the horizon at the trade deadline, and maybe shift to look to move Malik Beasley and Mo Bamba for like a Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, right? Imagine if you had a starting five of like D'Lo, Reeves, LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Miles Turner. And at least in the regular season, D'Lo is going to give you 17 points per game. He's going to give you 8 assists. He's going to give you 5 rebounds. He's going to shoot 50% from the field, and he's going to shoot, 40+% from 3. And then come the playoffs, that's where you're going to have to make that adjustment and prepare for D'Lo maybe not performing the way that we need him to perform on the offensive end and come the playoffs. But at that point, you have him locked up. So if you have to bring him off the bench, bring him off the bench. I mean, you give him the opportunity. But if he starts playing like he did in the Denver series, then, hey, buddy, sorry, you're going to have to come off the bench. Maybe you start Buddy Hield or something like that, right? Like, or Jared Vanderbilt or a Rui Hachimura or something like that. I think that would be the better approach because you would be deeper, you would be better. I don't think I liked Fred VanVleet. Like, I was making videos about like, hey, Lakers should go get Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. for Russell Westbrook when those rumors were around, right? I just think now at this point, it doesn't make as much sense. It just really doesn't. Again, how much better is Fred VanVleet over D'Lo? He's not that much better. He's not Kyrie. Like, Kyrie, sure. But things have to work out in order for that to happen. Fred VanVleet, Toronto might just look at it, but he's not worth giving up assets over, for one, over D'Lo. He was for Russell Westbrook because we just needed to get Russell Westbrook off the books. But D'Lo, again, like, I would rather just keep D'Lo than have to give up a first-round pick for Fred VanVleet. I just would. I just think the Lakers would still be just as good. Maybe come the playoffs, they'd be better. But again, you know what to expect with D'Lo now come playoff time, so you can make the adjustments accordingly. And you could look for other options elsewhere that could maybe supplement that, or maybe look to move D'Lo for, I don't know, DeMar DeRozan or something like that, right? Like, there's other options out there. And Fred VanVleet, 29, as opposed to D'Lo, who's, 26, 27. Like, I just think I'd rather just stick with D'Lo personally. I know a lot of people want D'Lo gone for whatever it is, they don't care. But I mean, you gotta remove your biases for D'Lo. Even if you hate D'Lo, it makes no sense to trade D'Lo and a first to go get Fred VanVleet. It just, for what? Like, it's silly. Fred VanVleet isn't that much better than D'Angelo Russell. He might be in the playoffs, but still, you're going to need more than just Fred VanVleet. You're going to need several pieces. And then the Lakers are hard capped, so that makes it nearly impossible to actually get those pieces. And you might not even be able to do that because depending on what Reeves and Rui get, it just... Again, you have the same problems as Kyrie Irving. So you're better off just going and getting Kyrie Irving if that's the case. So I like Fred VanVleet. If the Lakers found it, like if Fred VanVleet wants to come to Lakers for like, $18 million a year, sure. Then why not? Like if D'Lo is like It's I want 25 to 30 million or I walk. And you could go sign and trade for Fred VanVleet for like 18 million, so you still have enough money to do what you need to do, then sure. Then okay, fine, go that route. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. Again, he already turned down a 25 to 27 million a year contract from the Toronto Raptors. I don't think he's going to all of a sudden take half that in order to go play elsewhere. Maybe he'll take a little haircut to go to the Lakers as opposed to the Raptors, but I don't think he's going to take and lose half of his money. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you want the Lakers to do this? Do you not? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it.